Hey, I'm Pat Porter, broker for RecLand Realty. Here we talk about the rural real estate business and ideas and information to help you better manage and enjoy your own property. Do you own an undivided interest in land, or you've heard that phrase, undivided interest, and wondered what that was all about? Well, let me tell you. I'm on a piece of property in Louisiana now that some people called and asked me to come look at. And it's a situation where the gentleman that called and a couple of his relatives own an undivided interest in this property behind me here. It's well over 100 acres, and they're getting up in years, and they're ready to be done with it, ready to sell it and move on. However, the whole family is not in agreement. There are a number of siblings and children of passed away siblings who own an undivided interest in this tract too, and they're not all in agreement. They don't all want to sell it. Some of them have no idea what's going on. Some of them say, no, I'll never sell land. Some of them, yeah, I want to sell it. So what do you do with that? First of all, let's talk about what an undivided interest is. It means exactly what the words say. If you'll look at it real closely, everybody has an interest in the property. Interest means ownership. Everybody has an interest in this property, but it's undivided, meaning it's not carved out in everyone's specific portions yet. The gentleman that called me has an equivalent of about 20 acres undivided interest in his tract, but he can't come and put his feet on his 20 acres. His 20 acres is just part of the whole thing. It's kind of like an apple pie. You know, we've got an apple pie sitting on the table, and somebody comes along and says, hey, part of it's yours, part's yours, part's yours, and part's yours. Well, which part's yours, which part's mine? I really can't determine which slice belongs to me because it's not been portioned out that way. It's not been divided up that way. And this land's the same way. This gentleman and his sister own an equivalent of 20 acres each of this property, but they can't come put their feet on it because it's part of the whole mix. That's an undivided interest. And you say, Pat, well, why don't you just divide it up? Well, okay, easier said than done. But no, they can't agree on which 20 acres is theirs. The other family members go, no, we want to have that 20 acres, or no, that 20 acres is better than my 20 acres. And that becomes what happens when you try to divide an undivided interest. Now, not all the time. I've dealt with properties where it divided up pretty equitably, and everybody got their portion of it. Take a 40-acre block, and there are 4 people involved. They all got a 10-acre strip. I've seen that a number of times. But when you're dealing with rural real estate, I mean, no 2 acres are equal. So for you to say, you know, I'll take this 20, and you take that 20, and she can have that 20, my goodness, one may not have access. One may have a creek running through the middle of it. One may have great timber, and the other have no timber. So it's hard to get an equal value on all of those acres. That's why family members can't agree to divide a property up that way. And that's what they should do. They should divide it up so everybody's got their own piece of the pie. They can do whatever they want to with it. Grandma handed the property down to the heirs, and now everybody's got their piece, and they can go do whatever they want to with it. That's the best way. It seldom happens like that. Most of the time it ends up like this one, where you've got a number of people with percentages down to 1/32 that have an interest in this property, and they got just as much say-so as the guy that owns, 20% of it or whatever. So how do you deal with that? Couple of ways. Number one, don't get in the bind to start with. If you get inherited property with siblings, go ahead and deal with it. Go ahead and divide it up. Go ahead and make a plan before, and I'm sorry to say it this way, somebody dies. Because when somebody dies, then that portion gets passed along to heirs. And so it's like the branch of a tree. It just keeps forking and forking, and pretty soon you got a mess. So if you get a property that's inherited, just suck it up with your relatives and deal with it. Divide it up in equal pieces, or go ahead and sell it, take the money and go buy whatever you want, but deal with it. Putting it off and ignoring it and sticking your head in the sand and letting time continue to go by, it's just going to cause you more problems. Second thing to do, if you have an undivided interest like this, and you want out, you want your portion, you want to move on, maybe you live in another state like these owners do. Some of them have never been to this property. Sell your undivided interest. If you own 1/6, 1/8, 1/3, whatever, you can sell that just the same way you could if you owned the whole thing. You're just selling that percentage as opposed to the whole. And there are people that will buy an undivided interest. Now, the thing about that is investors that buy undivided interest, they don't pay full price because they can't. This property is not worth as much in an undivided state as it is if it were completely owned by a single person. It's just not, because if I owned half this property, I can't just go do something with my half because I got my partner here that may fight me. So an undivided interest isn't worth as much as owning it outright. Investors will pay a discounted amount for your undivided interest. Let's say this property right here is worth $2,000 an acre. They may pay you 40, 50, 60% of the value of this property. So they may pay you, $700, $800, $900, $1,000 an acre for your part. And that's worth $2,000 if you owned it outright, but the discounted value of it is 40, 50, 60%. That's just kind of a ballpark, things I've seen in this part of the country. So if you sell your undivided interest, sure, you can sign it, be done, and move on, but you're going to get a discounted price for it. The reason being, the guy that bought it, he's going to have legal fees, he's going to have costs over time that are going to accrue to him to deal with this, because now he is the partners and in bed with your heirs. He wants out, and there are legal mechanisms to get him out, but it's going to cost some money. So all that said, undivided interest, hey, that's great when grandma passes the property down, but if you don't deal with it like adults, deal with it professionally, and everybody handle it properly, you end up with a mess, you end up with squabbles, you end up with fights over things that ought to be a big blessing, not a big burden. If you got any questions about undivided interest, shoot them to me. Talk to an attorney in your state. Every state probably deals with it slightly differently, so I'm not going to tell you about Louisiana. I know exactly how this is going to be handled here, but each state might be different, and I don't want to say something about exclusively Louisiana and it might not apply to you and mess you up. So I don't want that to happen. So ask around, get some good information, but deal with undivided interest. So thanks for watching our videos. There's some more right there. Check them out.